Welcome to Heartcast, a podcast of Hospice of the Red River Valley. I'm your host, Dave Nillis. Today we're joined by Jana Kuntz. Jana is a grief specialist with Hospice of the Red River Valley. She also served as a hospice chaplain, so she has a unique view of handling grief and loss. Jana, all of us have experienced some form of loss and or grief during this pandemic. What are some of the types of loss that you're hearing about?
Well, of course, people have lost family members, the death of someone, but also loss of jobs and loss of companionship. They can't go out or do the things they want to do or gather with family. Loss of housing. Some people that have lost jobs have also lost their housing, so that's a big thing. And then kids, they haven't been able to go to school. They haven't had their friend time like they usually do, and those are big losses for them. So we hear a lot about that. Also, loss of routine. People are maybe working at home or they're not working, and so they've lost their regular routine. And just eating out and travel, all those are losses that we've had to deal with during COVID.
What are some of the challenges of grief during a pandemic?
I think the biggest challenge is loneliness. People are more isolated during this time, and so they're dealing with their grief a lot of times on their own. They're not able to gather again with family or to see people face to face, and so they feel very lonely. Even we are doing more virtual visits, virtual support groups. We're not gathering in person because it just isn't safe quite yet. And people notice that they really want that companionship.
What are some of the different feelings and emotions associated with COVID-19?
There's so many. Frustration is a big one. Anger is another one. People are getting very angry about this. COVID fatigue is one thing I think we're all dealing with. We feel like we need to be doing the things we used to do and we can't. We maybe forget our mask in the car and we don't want to go get it. Or we just don't even realize we've done it. And that's all part of COVID fatigue. We're just tired of the whole business and everybody's there, and there's a lot of grief involved with that too.
What tips can you offer on coping with grief during a pandemic?
Well, I think everyone has their own coping mechanisms, their own coping abilities, but I think staying in touch, a lot of times people are in congregate housing facilities and people can't visit them like they want to, but there are ways to stay in touch. There's phone calls and there's FaceTime and Zoom and all of those things. And in those situations, staff are excellent at helping. They'll bring an iPad in for somebody to help them with that kind of thing. I think, so staying in touch, write actual notes, send them by snail mail. It's kind of a unique thing nowadays, and that works great. Pick up a new hobby or go back to an old one that you haven't had time to do for a while. Do that. Play board games with your kids instead of video games or whatever. Hide and seek, get the kids moving around the house. I think keep yourself moving too. Try to eat healthy. We're cooking more at home, so we have a very good opportunity to eat healthier and to be healthier, and try and exercise. In this climate, that's not always the easiest thing to do, but, even walking around in the house.
What advice do you have for people moving forward through this pandemic?
Well, I think to know that, yes, we will get through it. It is getting very long and it is getting tiresome, but we will get through it. And, you've heard it said, well, we're on the same boat. We're not in the same boat. We're in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. And so be kind to each other. I think be kind to yourself. Give some grace to each day, and I think we can do this.
Is there anything different or unique with children that we see in how they react to grief or loss during this pandemic compared to adults?
I think kids are quite resilient. They can understand more than we give them credit for. And so if they ask questions about what's going on, tell them the truth. Always tell them the truth. And don't give them any more information than what they ask for. But give them the information, and they'll be good with that. They'll respect that. And they'll always come back then with their questions because they know they'll get the truth. So I think kids grieve, and they do grieve differently. As it depends on what their age is, and we have a lot of resources on that too, on different ages and how they grieve and their different reactions.
Jenna, what resources does Hospice of the Red River Valley offer for those who might be struggling with loss or grief during this pandemic?
Well, we do have virtual support groups going on, and they are at the same times right now as our regular support groups have been, but they're offered through a Zoom-like platform. And so people can join that. And that's been pretty amazing. People have joined from all over the country. One night I had someone from New York City, someone from San Francisco, and someone from Colorado, all in the same group, plus my regular group. So it's pretty amazing that we can reach people like that. Also, people are feeling really guilty about, especially I think not being able to visit people. That's a really big thing, and especially if they're in nursing homes or assisted living. But there's nothing they can do about that. And so again, stay in touch as best you can, whatever way works best, and try to get past that guilt by taking care of yourself as well.
Was there any difference in the people that you mentioned from like New York and San Francisco? Did they bring anything else different to the table that you hadn't been seeing from our usual support group?
I really think they do, because it's a different culture. We live in the Midwest. On the East Coast, it's a different culture. On the West Coast, it's a different culture, not just a different time zone, and so definitely I think they brought different culture into the group, and that's amazing, and it always helps other people, I think, to see that grief is it's everywhere, and it covers everyone at some time in their life. So absolutely, your grief is your grief. That's what we like to tell people, and it's absolutely true. The journeys may be similar, and I think people learn a lot from each other. That's why we do the support groups, because they can learn a lot from each other's journey. But your grief is your grief. Everyone has their own unique thing going on with grief. So, but we do have a lot of resources available, written resources as well, that we can offer people. Even if they haven't had someone on hospice services, if they're community people, we offer everything free for them from the grief department, and they are welcome to call anytime requesting resources. They are welcome to stop in, although it's best to call and get an appointment with one of us so that we know we have time to give them and to sit down and talk with them.
Thank you for listening to Heartcast. For past episodes and more information about Hospice of the Red River Valley, visit hrrv.org.